Finally, it's time to play the game. Great time to subscribe to the channel. Big Ten content every single day. Always crush that like button to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Michigan. We know the stakes. We know these two teams are going to bash each other in for 60 minutes on the field at the Horseshoe on Saturday. But it might be what happens earlier in the week in the training room that might decide who goes to Indianapolis, because both of these teams have injuries that they got to deal with, and both of these teams have guys that they really want healthy on Saturday for this big matchup. For Michigan, of course, it's Blake Corum and it's Donovan Edwards at the running back position. We know how important the running game is to the University of Michigan. Blake Corum is a freaking Heisman candidate. Donovan Edwards is great as well. It sounds like Blake Corum should be good to go. We don't know really about Donovan Edwards yet, because even if one of those two guys, if Donovan Edwards isn't able to go, that could affect this game big time. And then you look at Ohio State and Miyan Williams, right? He's kind of been their main guy in terms of the running game this season. Like, he's a big part of this offense. Even though Dallin Hayden has done a great job stepping up for him, Zach Harrison said Tommy Eichenberg played the game with 2 broken hands. Like, there's injuries all over the place, I think, on both of these teams. I think it might come down to how many of these guys can get healthy could determine the outcome of this football game, because it seems like a lot of these injured guys are playing very, very important position. Now, I want to look at some. I want to break down. I want to get down and dirty here as it pertains to this game. We know Michigan's rushing offense is amazing, right? With Blake Corum, with Donovan Edwards, even with just Blake Corum, if it's that, on Saturday. So the question is, can Michigan run the football on this Ohio State rush defense? The answer, as of late, for Ohio State appears to be a resounding yes, because Ohio State gave up over 200 yards to Northwestern in that windstorm in Evanston a few weeks ago. Evan Hull ran for 124 yards and a touchdown, over 230 total rushing yards they gave up to a Northwestern team that wasn't going to throw the football in that game. Okay, and then you look at Indiana, maybe one of the worst rushing attacks in the entire Big Ten, ran for 186 yards in a very diversified rushing effort for the Hoosiers in that game. Like, this Ohio State defense has given up 537 yards in their last 3 games. Okay, 45% of the total yards that Ohio State has given up via the running game have been in the month of November. Like, this is a rushing defense that needs to buck up in order for them to be able to contain Michigan. I really believe, because of what Michigan has on their offensive line, what Michigan has in their running game, there are yards to be had against this Ohio State rush defense. Ohio State seems to build their defensive lines from the outside in, right? They've produced a lot of great pass rushers over the years, especially under Ryan Day. You look at the Bosas, you look at Chase Young on the outside. Even this year, they've got really good pass rushers with JT Tuimoloau, Zach Harrison, Mike Hall. Like, there's good talent in terms of pass rushing. I'll get to that later in the video. But in terms of the interior, it seems like Michigan has the advantage. It seems like Michigan can pound the ball, can pound the rock up the middle against this Ohio State defense. Ohio State needs to get tough in the interior, because if Michigan is able to get a yard, 2 yards down the field on a majority of these plays, it's going to make things a lot easier in the running game. And we know the key to containing Michigan and the key to beating Michigan is at least slowing down or even stopping the running game. Heck, look what happened with Illinois last week. Now, they had some injuries to kind of help them out, with Blake Corum not really playing in the second half, but you found out when you kind of take the running game away, you put the ball into the hands of J.J. McCarthy, it's field goal city for the boys from Ann Arbor, Michigan. There's no question about that. So we know the Michigan run game is what Ohio State wants to stop. What about on the other side of the ball, right? Last year, we're talking, especially it was really prominent in this game last year, where this Michigan pass rush was really good. And it is good this year. But you know what the best unit is on that Michigan defense? It's that Michigan secondary. They are really good. They are the top passing defense right now in the Big Ten Conference. They haven't allowed a 250-yard plus passer all season long. They've only had a 200-yard passer 3 times in the last 7 games. So, you know that this is going to be one of the biggest challenges for this Ohio State passing game. You know, maybe Iowa is the only other team that could probably cover Ohio State's wide receivers like Michigan can. So here's the key for this great Michigan secondary. I think the key is one of these guys is going to have a good game. It's probably going to be either Marvin Harrison Jr. or it's going to be Emeka Egbuka. I think the big key for Michigan is you can't have multiple guys maybe go over 100 yards. You can't have multiple guys continue to beat you deep, play after play after play, because now when multiple guys are kind of involved and CJ Stroud can really go anywhere with the football, that's where this offense really gets dangerous. I personally believe it's going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. that's going to have a big day, because I think no matter how good this Michigan pass defense is, I honestly believe that it's going to be very difficult to cover them all, whether it's Emeka Egbuka, whether it's Xavier Johnson, Julian Fleming, and Cade Stover. I love him at the tight end. It seems like all he does is score touchdowns and produce in the red zone. Like, he's such a big part to this passing offense, and Michigan can't get beat by the big play. Right? Once the big play deep, like we've seen it so many times throughout the Ryan Day era, and even going back to the Urban Meyer era at Ohio State, once they stretch the field and once they go deep, like I even saw it earlier this season against Iowa, right? When they were able to hit the deep ball down the field, they weren't able to do it early against the Hawkeyes, but once they were to hit that deep ball, it was game over, and that's when this game really broke open. Michigan, you got to keep everything in front of you. If Ohio State gets over the top, especially early in this game, and they kind of set a precedent that that's what they can do throughout this matchup, it could be a long day at the office for the Michigan Wolverines and their secondary, so that's what they need to do. I honestly believe the best offensive line, the offensive line that plays the best game, is going to win this game, and they're going to win the Big Ten East. Right? Michigan and Ohio State. Right now, that defensive line, because that's what these offensive lines are going to be going up against. Michigan and Ohio State are tied for second in the Big Ten right now with 31 sacks apiece. Like, we talk about the secondary being the best unit for Michigan. This pass rush ain't bad either. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But these offensive lines are really good as well. Ohio State is amazing at pass protection. They've only given up 7 sacks. 7 this entire season. That's insanity, right? Nobody's getting by Paris Johnson, it seems, at left tackle for Ohio State. Michigan has only given up 12 sacks. Ohio State first in the Big Ten in pass protection there. Michigan third in the Big Ten right now in pass protection. So it's all going to depend on the offensive line. So how do you attack each offensive line? I think you attack each offensive line in a different way. I honestly believe for Ohio State, your exterior pass rushers are going to attack the exterior of that Michigan offensive line. We know about Oluwatimi, right? We know about that great All-American center in the middle, and we know about that running game in the middle. I think you got to attack the exterior. You got to attack the tackles of this offensive line. I think, because sometimes you'd like to have your guys that are on the ends, and they maybe rip and stunt towards the middle. I don't think that's really going to fly when Michigan goes back to pass in this football game. I think you got to maybe line up multiple guys off tackle a little bit and try to overload kind of each side at the tackles of this offensive line. I think that's how you can pressure J.J. McCarthy, because, man, for Ohio State, if you can contain this running game and then you're in the face of J.J. all afternoon long, that's going to give you a tremendous advantage. When I look at Michigan, I think it's attacking the interior of the offensive line. I think the reason they've been so good in terms of throwing the ball, Ohio State, has been they've had great protection from the outside, from their tackles. So ripping and stunting to the middle and trying to force that interior Ohio State offensive line to have a good day, I think could be big for this Michigan front. It's going to be a fantastic matchup. I honestly believe, considering all the things we know, Michigan running backs kind of coming off some injuries. We saw what J.J. McCarthy is doing in the passing game. I think Ohio State's got a slight edge. And it wouldn't surprise me if Ohio State pulls out the race in the hole. Jackson Smith-Njigba, injured during the Notre Dame game. They've been very careful as to when they bring him back. They tried to bring him back a couple of times this season. Hadn't gone well. They're not pushing the issue too much. What if they're holding him back for this very game. A healthy 100% Jackson, Smith, and Jigba might just put the Buckeyes over the top. I want to hear what you guys think about this matchup. Who's going to Indianapolis? Who's keeping their college football playoffs alive? Leave your thoughts, leave your predictions in the comments below. It is going to be awesome. It's going to be a doozy. I can't wait to take in this game. I'm Big Ten Ted, and we will see you in the next one.